Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much, Carly, and thank you, Shelley. Thank you to the Spring Creek Project and Oregon State University. I really appreciate being able to be part of the Lookout Lecture Series. I am especially honored to have Jessica and Sonya with me. This is a true privilege to be able to sort of talk together about the program that they actually experienced and were kind enough to share their experiences with me for the book. So I'm going to start just by reading a very, very short passage from the book just to give some context of the program. And then I'm going to just launch into a little bit of question and answer with Jessica and Sonya. And I think there's a short period of time at the end of the program where we'll be answering questions. So keep that in mind. Let's see. If you live in California or are lucky enough to be from there, fire is a constant backdrop. It defines the evolving surface of the state, leaving forests naked and mountain ranges blackened, communities decimated, and vineyards and orchards scorched. Extreme fires used to be once a decade events. I remember the 1991 fire in the Oakland Hills. Growing up, we had a Christmas card of family friends on our fridge, posed in front of what used to be their house. Just the fence remained. I was born in Oakland, and it was shocking to see homes in the Bay Area leveled and the ground blackened. Now, fires in California are year round. Or as Pine puts it, Pine, who is a speaker in a future lecture, Stephen Pine. Fire season, quote, lasts 13 months. Fires burn hotter, faster, and longer than they ever did. And because of climate change, invasive plant species, invasive beetles, and massive housing developments in high risk fire zones, those fires are more damaging to structures, species, and human lives. 15 of the 20 most destructive fires in state history have occurred since 2007. Today, California logs 78 more annual fire days than it did 50 years ago. A 2018 state commissioned report on climate change projected that under current emission trends, the average burn area in California will increase 77% by the end of the century. California has always had a fire problem. Now that problem is a constant crisis. Among California's solutions is a near invisible incarcerated workforce that has been laboring on the front lines since 1946. Depending on the year, inmate firefighters make up as much as 30% of California's wildland fire crews. CDCR works with the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, CAL FIRE, and the Los Angeles County Fire Department, LA County Fire, to operate 35 fire camps located in 26 counties. All the camps are minimum security facilities and are staffed with correctional officers. When Shauna started the program, around 3,100 inmates worked the conservation camps. 2,150 were fire lane qualified. The rest supported the camps by working in the laundry room as landscapers, in the office doing paperwork as water treatment plant operators, or in the kitchen. In an average year, CDCR claims the Forestry Program provided about 3 million hours of service to fires and other emergencies and 7 million hours to community service projects, saving California taxpayers about $100 million a year. Other states, including Arizona, Kentucky, Oregon, Nevada, West Virginia, Wyoming, and Georgia, also use prisoners to fight fires, but none of them relies as heavily on its inmate population as California does. So that's sort of a brief description of the program. I want to talk a little bit, Jessica and Sonya, with you guys about what leads a person who's incarcerated. You know, CDCR talks about the program as something that is volunteer and that people choose to go to. And let's start with you, Jessica. What are some of the circumstances that would lead someone to quote unquote volunteer or choose to go to the program to become a firefighter, which is a very risky position?
For starters, for some of the girls that are sentenced to less violent crimes, they would prefer to go attend the camps because they promise a reduced sentence. And they also they like to promote the fact that the food is better, the visitation is better, your family doesn't feel like they're visiting you at a prison. They feel like they're visiting you at a park setting. So those
Why
are some
did
of the
you
things.
go?
I went because I couldn't stand seeing my grandma cry in fear, and the way that they would treat her at some of the prison institutions. Like, she had to change her sandals a few times just to come and visit me, or her clothing wasn't up to par, or because they were wearing the wrong color, and then she would cry a lot more at the institution than at the actual camp.
I think a lot of people who don't visit prisons or jails regularly don't understand how hard it is for family members or anyone really to actually visit and to be able to see people who are on the inside. I remember there was one visit that I had to CIW where they the cops almost made me turn around because I was wearing jeans, and
Mhm.
luckily I
Yes.
had a suitcase full of clothes in my car and I was like, fine, I'm just going to go and change.
Yeah.
But I was so indignant and I was so mad about it. And
Mhm.
I imagine that, I was among the people who probably, I had changes of clothing in the car, and I'm sure that people don't necessarily go through every single rule, and there are so many. Sonya, can you talk a little bit about why you chose to go to fire camp?
I basically did not like being it was behind bars in bars. Does that make sense? Because if you're at CIW, you're locked down basically 24/7. No matter if you could roam the yard or whatever, there was constant yard downs because somebody wanted to act a fool. So you really couldn't
Can you
do what you
describe what
needed
a
to do.
yard down is?
Oh, so like let's say there's a fight going on somewhere, or somebody needed to be escorted from Barnaburg to another location. They'll stop the yard so that way they can either A, the officers can get to the fight, or B, the officer can transfer that inmate from one location to another safely. It just it there's so much petty shit going on, like it's ridiculous. I just did not like being in that type of setting. It's bad enough I was already going to have to do time. I just don't want to feel like I'm already doing time. So I chose
Yeah,
to do
because
fire camp.
Did you
so for
feel like it was different when you got to fire camp?
Fire camp, I felt like I had a little bit more freedom. Like I didn't have to hear that door shut and lock. I don't have to look out the window or that little 4x8 box that they want to call a window and see freaking towers and wires and officers. I still see officers, but I also see mountains, trees, I see hawks. I can get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, walk outside and chop it up with my higher power and not be bothered by anybody because, like, hey, that's normal on in campgrounds. Um, just things like that.
Can you describe some of the training that you went through first at CIW and then maybe what a typical day at Malibu was like?
Yeah, so basically, when you're at CIW, you have to go through the process. So you're still considered GP, which is general population. You have no extra privileges. You're just basically waiting for your turn to see if you're eligible to go to the camps. So they either have you doing like kitchen work or anything, and then after that, they'll transfer you to the unit that's specifically for camp. And then once you're there, every inmate has a job. When you're in the fire camp unit, your only job is to work out. You literally work out from the minute your doors pop open, and you worked out all day long until like, I think it's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then after that, you're allowed to have free time, which is not much because I believe the last yard is around 6 or 7. So you don't get to really see like the sky, the stars. You don't get to see the basic nature that you normally do on a normal day.
Okay. And in terms of, sorry, there's a dog barking and my dog is now barking. Maybe you don't hear that.
Oh, Morris, get him.
I apologize to everyone listening. In terms of, so one of the reactions when I first wrote, the book came out of an article that I wrote for the magazine, the Times magazine, and one of the first reactions was how low the firefighting wages are, and they are incredibly low. However, within prison industry standards, they're considered very high. Is that another appealing part of going to the program?
Me? Only me?
Yeah, anyone, either Sonya or Jessica. Sorry, Sonya.
Look, y'all don't want to hear my mouth on that because honestly, after being there, going through what we went through, being on the out of counties, fighting the fires, going through all of that training, I still stand by what I say. They need to pay them women and those men more than $1 something a day to take care and fight these fires because at the end of the day, they are sacrificing themselves as one in order to save masses. I get it. I may sound selfish, but if I feel like if I'm going to put myself out there like that, then hey, give me a better pay, set me up with better medical, something. You know, don't sit here and say, oh, once you cross the line, you're a firefighter. We treat you like a firefighter. But at the end of the day, you still look at me like I'm an inmate. No, no. Like you said in the book, inmates are the front line to a lot of these wildfires that are going on. They are the ones that sacrifice themselves and put out the fires, where it be a hand crew, where it be a jump shot, where it be a smoke jumper. Half of these people started off in the prison system. So you can't sit here and tell me that you cannot not pay these inmates what they are deserved. And if you feel that they deserve $1 a day or $1.25 or $1.75, $2, whatever, then the state got some issues.
So one of the things you just mentioned was that some of the people who are on the front lines who are not incarcerated firefighters started out as incarcerated firefighters, but it seems like that's actually a really, really difficult transition to make. And that was something I wanted to get to in a little bit.
So when I was released, basically it was not difficult for me to get a job because I did land a job 2 weeks out, but it was a minimum wage job and it was as a server at Denny's and working the graveyard shift. I didn't put that I was a felon because I didn't want to risk not getting a job, and I really wanted a job so that I can look good for my parole because I wanted to get off parole as soon as possible. And the only time that I found it difficult to get a job that was when I wanted an office setting, when I wanted something more for myself, was when it became a little bit more difficult for me because I just couldn't really lie too much on my resume and say that I hadn't been to prison because most of the time they wanted a background check and I knew I wasn't gonna pass.
Did either of you want to pursue firefighting? Was that something that you were interested in, Sonya?
At one point in my life, it was. It wasn't until the Edison fire or the church fire when I was speaking to my kids about it, and they were very adamant. They were like, no, 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 mom. See, like I love cutting line. Jess, I know you know the feeling of when that chainsaw's in front of you and you are pushing your way through. That is like the best feeling ever. But yo, I'm too fluffy right now to be trying to hike up no mountain, to be trying to cut no line for no 5 to 10 miles right now. Yeah,
Can you
no.
go back and just some basics, because also I imagine that there aren't a lot of people who know what it's like to be a firefighter. Can you describe what you mean when you say cutting line? What are you actually doing? What exactly are you working on?
Hmm.
First of all, you have a
So
chainsaw.
yes, you have a chainsaw. Your pack is supposed to weigh 55 pounds. My pack, when I was a Sawyer, weighed 75 pounds. And the only reason why I know how much it weighs is because my boss took it off my back and was like, "What the hell do you have in here?" Um, I basically doubled up on everything because it gets hot out there. I had an incident where I got dehydrated really bad and I had to go to the hospital. So I just basically made sure I had a lot of water, I had a lot of protein snacks. I had my drip drops. I always stayed with my oil, my gas, my chains that are sharp, my tools to change my blade out, to sharpen my blade. I had some wedges just in case we had to fall some trees. Um, had my light sticks. Oh my God, my camel pack, and then I had a spare camel pack just to be on the safe side because you don't know when you're going to be able to fill up. You don't want to run out of water when you're fighting a fire because on a natural setting, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Los Angeles forest or a basic forest type setting. Um, but we cut down stuff like that. It's not we sometimes we do mineral brush where it's just like a couple of bushes here and there that are very thick, heavy vegetation. We limb them up, we lollipop it. Lollipopping is just taking the base off and leaving the top of the tree so that way the fire can't jump. Um, oh God, there's just like so much. Jess, do you remember?
Jessica, what about, can you describe what a containment line is? Because a lot of times fires are talked about in terms of, it's 40% contained, or, and that relates to creating the line. Can you define that?
A containment line would be a group, so it would be a group between maybe 10 to 15 women. The first four girls are considered saw teams, and those four girls, it would be one chainsaw, one bucker, which would be the girl that's throwing everything that the sawyer is chopping down. And after those four girls go in and clear the brush, the following girls behind, the next three are they carry axes and gasoline, and their duties are to remove the stubs. And so the chainsaws come in, they chop everything down. The girls right behind come and take off all the nubs, everything. And then finally, like the last five girls or however many you have on crew are scraping the soil till it's bare mineral soil. And that's a containment line.
And how long, I mean, you were out on fires for sometimes 2 weeks at a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these fires, you're camping at the base camp. Sometimes it's like where you've hiked out to and you're sleeping on just the soil that is as flat as you can find. But you're basically out in the woods, you know, eating with the other firefighters, behaving as a fire crew in the same way that Cal fire crews, forestry fire crews, municipal fire crews, whoever's called onto the fire behaves, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I found, you know, so complicated about the program was that you guys had to do what I think is one of the hardest jobs there is right now, which is fighting megafires and addressing the climate crisis on the front lines in a physical and emotional way. And you did it while you were incarcerated. So you were dealing with a whole other level of emotional, you know, I don't want to say trauma or baggage, or like, I don't want to put words in your
Stress.
mouth, but you were, yeah, stress. Like you had,
Stress.
so what was that like for you? And Sonia, since you have that word handy, I'm gonna
um,
throw it to you.
um, I basically just turned like all of my stress and my aggression in the fact that like I paying my debt to society. You know what I mean? Like I tried to find the good things out of being incarcerated, being in camp, you know. It is very stressful. It is hard on the body. It is wear and tear because you do injure yourself. You know what I mean? And it's not no just, oh, I'm injured right then and there. No, like a lot of the stuff that we do has a long-term effect on our bodies. And half the time we don't even realize it until we're gone, you know, or we're not there anymore.
Do
Um,
you still feel effects from it?
yeah, like my knees are bad, but like um that's that's normal. Me wearing boots, yeah, I will not ever again set my feet in boots. Nope.
No more
Mm-mm.
fire boots for you.
No more fire boots for me. No, 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 ma'am. Um, like certain like my back, but other than it's just like normal little stuff. I'm like, oh, okay. My body's just like, yeah, we're not as young as we used to be. So,
Okay. Um, one of the things that, because you and I have talked about the wages, you've talked about the wages already. I wanted to just point out that by comparison, within the prison industry for California, prisoners make between 35 cents and 95 cents after 40% of their wages are contributed to restitution. And
hmm
so the motivation to go to the fire camp, which does pay between, I think it pays now $5 a day in camp. When you were there, I think it was actually closer to $1.50 to 2 days
hmm
in camp, and it's $1 an hour on the line to
yep,
$2 on the line, which is by comparison. Again, a Cal Fire firefighter makes about $55,000 a year plus overtime.
yep,
A seasonal firefighter, which, you know, admittedly I think is paid too low, makes about $13 an hour and has no health insurance, and that's for the
right.
forestry department. But you guys aren't paid anything, and you're, you know, you're working the same, and you have
See,
no
that's how they
protection.
get you to. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off,
That's okay.
but
Go ahead.
that's how they get you to join the forestry program. Like there's nothing wrong with it. Like if you want to go ahead and do it, then do it. But the incentives that you're offering and that you're letting these women know, like, hey, yeah, you can pay your restitution off, you know, depending on how much time you have, you get good food, you're not behind bars, you know, you get treated like an actual person who this. It's like it wasn't what they said it was going to be. Like I'm not gonna lie, I've met quite a few solid women while I was incarcerated versus now that I'm out, you know. I've even met women that did not even need to be incarcerated but were incarcerated, you know, and they were doing this just so that way they could see their family or their family didn't have to feel like, oh, this is a bad thing, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it's like how Jess said, some of these officers take their title and just use it just in the wrong way. I feel like just because we're here, that does not mean that I am not human. It does not mean that I don't have common sense and I cannot think. I'm not a dog. I'm not an animal. I am a person who made a mistake, you know?
I've talked, Jessica, with you about how much it costs for hygiene, how like getting, money on the books, paying restitution, how much it costs to just have calls to, you know, do JPay. Can you describe a little bit about what that means just to be able to like buy thermals to be warm in Malibu. Like what, like, you know, the cost of being a prisoner compared to how much you're being paid, and what that incentive is also part of it too, because it's really, you know, the circumstances in state prison are really difficult to endure and live through.
Yeah,
Just
so
like,
yeah, so for me, I felt like I was in a situation where I was actually really blessed that my family was there for me, but I also came across a lot of women that didn't have the same circumstance that I did, or were already older, where their family, or repeated offenders where their family were just like, okay, you know, it's time for you to take care of yourself. And what they pay these girls, it might not be a lot, and as sad as it sounds, these girls are grateful for the pennies that they're given, because they're able to finally claim that they have a job, and not just any job, but you know, they make you believe that you're a firefighter. But then when you leave, it's very hard for you to actually get in a position or on a hand crew. And I'm pretty sure that those pennies came through for a lot of women that were in there to just buy like their basic soap, and you know, their soups that they needed in case they were allergic to whatever they were serving, or didn't want to eat whatever was being served, or because of their religion or certain things like that. And they are accommodated to a certain extent, but I mean, if these girls are going to be working the way that they are, I understand that we're incarcerated, and that, you know, it should be paying the same as any other institution. But I feel like being part of my partner's tragic death, it just really goes to show that our lives are online. And most of the time you're watching the news, those people in orange are inmates. And I feel like we should just show a little bit more gratitude, and you know, allow the girls to work because they're working, allow them to work their way up into a position where they can sustain themselves and provide for themselves while they're incarcerated, because some of them don't have families, and it's their first job as a professional, I guess you can say, in a way, because most of these girls haven't had jobs to make them feel worthy. And this kind of makes you feel worthy because you're alongside the free world firefighters, the free fire captains, the free engine crews, and you kind of feel a little special. You're like, hey, you know, I'm as good enough to be out here with them. And the way that you're getting paid just kind of makes you feel like it's some type of labor force, because at the end of the day, when we get back from camp, if our crew is on call, it doesn't matter how tired you were, how hard your captain trained you, guess what? If the alarm goes off, you're going right out to a fire. So I feel like that should be accommodated.
so you brought up three things that I want to touch on, and I hope that I can remember them, but I have a very feeble brain. But you
No,
brought up
you
a
don't.
lot of stuff.
You got this.
um,
You got this.
Thank you. Thank you for your support, Sonia. I appreciate it. The first thing is, of course, Shauna, who we haven't talked at all about yet, and who was the reason that I actually was drawn to write about the camps. I saw the article that was written about her when she passed away. She was a firefighter at Malibu. She was the bucker for Jessica. Jessica, by the way, is Carla in the book. I don't know if I mentioned that, but when I was writing the book, we used a different name. And Shauna died fighting a fire in the Malibu, in the Santa Monica Hills in Malibu. And the book is largely, you know, started because of her. I am so sorry about Morris. He just heard an airplane. Uh, so I wanted to acknowledge Shauna first, and your proximity to her death, and the fact that that happened during a fire while you were on the line, which is its own, you know, like I said before, firefighting is a trauma being imprisoned as a trauma, and then watching a very close friend and colleague and the person you work closely with and closest with die, has to be incredibly hard for you. And how are you doing now with that?
I feel like I've as the years have passed, I feel like I'm still constantly reminded about her, especially now that I never thought that I would end up where she lived in the Antelope Valley. So I'm always thinking of her, and I always pass by the trap bar where, oh, I'm sorry guys, sometimes it's hard. um, I think about her often, but it's a shame. It's a shame that, things had to happen the way that they did, and it's even more shameful the way that they went about giving the news to her mother and everything that's happened to her mom after, trying to charge her for certain medical bills and certain things that happen, I feel like are just really unfair. And unfortunately, she gave her life on the line, and it's something that Crew 3 got to witness firsthand, and it's just something that you know, we had to just learn from it and just kind of keep our heads up and try to finish our time, try to continue to do the best that we could. But I just feel like they sold it to us. By what I mean by sold it to us is like they tried to tell us, oh, everything's gonna be okay, and they gave us a solution, this illusion that she was probably possibly still gonna be alive, and everybody kind of, I guess, was hoping for it, even though we knew, but we didn't want to accept because we saw, blood coming out her ears and her nose, and we saw her turning blue, and we saw her helicoptered out. So we knew, but a lot of us kind of were hoping, we were just like, oh, maybe something's gonna happen where she's gonna pull through, or, maybe we don't know, it's just unfortunate that happened. But because that happened and because her life was lost, I feel like we should help the girls get a change, or any person that ends up in the camps or in any institution. I feel like we should use this as a step towards making a change, not let her death kind of go in vain, and just kind of, oh, well, brush it under the rug. She's just another inmate that passed. Like, so that's why I'm very grateful for you, Jaime, because you're actually giving me, Sonya, and a lot of the other girls the exposure that we would have never got. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for sharing your stories with me. One of the things that I've always been struck by is that so many of these fires, like the fire that was in Paradise, like the fire in Napa, so many of them are they're started by PG&E. They're started by these privately owned utility companies that don't end up actually ever, they end up admitting to white collar crimes and never doing jail time. They pay enormous fines, cost billions of dollars in damage, and they have, thousands of people who are every year, doing their dirty work and cleaning up their mess as incarcerated crews. And it is a very clear example, to me at least, of how the criminal justice system is unfair. That was a conclusion I came to. Is that something that you felt, Sonya, when you were out there, or that you think
Oh,
about ever?
I knew it was unfair from jump, and not just from my experience, but just from like running with people that have been previously incarcerated and hearing what they were incarcerated for, then actually being in prison behind bars and just listening to some of the women's stories. And I'm just like, yeah, It's corrupted. It's literally corrupted. And there's the sad thing is no matter how many times we vote, no matter who's in office, no matter who's running for governor, president, whatever politician they got going on right now, it's not going to change. Only because politics haven't set to where they pad themselves. They protect their own ass, no matter what it is. You know what I mean? It is what it is. It's one of those things that we can't control. We can't fix. No matter how many voices have been spoken for, no matter how much has happened, no matter what, it's not going to change. No matter, I believe it won't.
So this is what another conclusion I came to, and I could be totally wrong about this, but both of you, and I would love to hear more from you about this particular point, described, and you kind of touched on it already, some of the really good parts of the camp, and that you were pushed really hard, that you had to be on crews with people that you might not ever talk to before, that you had to work with people that you wouldn't have wanted to work with, and that it kind of like once you were out there and on a fire, all of that faded away and you just did it because you had to. There was no option. You were dealing with a much greater, enemy, which was this fire and what was immediate right there. But that there was a lot that there was to be proud of in terms of what you accomplished, that when you cut line you could see a beginning and an end, and that there was like this feeling of satisfaction. At least that's what I think you both have described to me separately. And what I wish was that kind of program, that kind of participation could exist and not be part of the prison system. That there are all of these people who actually could participate in, what is actually needed and missing in California, which is a firefighting force. There are people that like the state is facing a crisis. There are people who are trained who need jobs and who want jobs, and they're not being allowed to do them. And so I feel like there's room and optimism for like a civilian conservation corps or something where people could actually have a real bridge into jobs. Is there any sense of feeling of hope in that way, Sonia? Do you feel like that could ever happen? I mean, I feel like maybe I'm being pie
I've
in the sky, but
I've heard talk of them starting handmade handmade crews, for those that have been incarcerated and haven't been incarcerated. I know two girls that actually were able to go into wildland firefighting from prison straight up. It's just, it's all on who you know, basically. Like, it's not what you know, but who you know.
mm-hmm.
And if I feel like if they could just do a mentorship program to where like, hey, we need volunteers for this. We will train you. We will find people to help you understand what this is like, you know what I mean? So you can understand and get the same feeling of accomplishment and um, that new sense of self when you're out there. Cause I don't know, like when I was out there on the line and looking at hiking, working with the girls, we had this thing where it was 13 up, 13 down. We leave no one behind. No matter how bad it was, no matter what it was, we make sure we all go in, we all come out one way or the other. I just started my training when the story about Shauna hit the news. So I was actually in PFT when we were pulled into forestry and we were watching the news about Shauna. And I took that as motivation. And I was like, damn, she gave her life. So let me not let her like be for nothing. You know what I mean? Like if she could do it and she gave her life doing it, then I know I can. you know?
And just to give a little context, PFT is the
It's
training.
pure fucking torture. That's what it is.
It's the
Personal
training
fitness training.
yes,
No, it's pure
at
fucking
at
torture.
CIW. That's the training at CIW,
Yes.
which is the women's
It's the
prison.
physical
that-
fitness training. But for those that are fluffy and don't work out, it's pure fucking torture.
It's
I think for
3
everyone.
weeks. Yes. We're losing people. So yeah, the numbers are decreasing and the
Oh, my bad, my bad. But yeah, no, I mean, PFT is just the basic exercise training that they give you to make sure that you're physically fit and that you can handle going to the camps and hiking before you go.
Okay. And can you actually describe what some of that training is?
You have to run the mile in under what was it, 8 minutes? 10 minutes, Jay?
I want to say it's 9 something, like 9:30 or 9:40, something like that.
Yeah, you got to be able to at least um
Pass the time
do that.
hike, pass the pass all of your physical exam, which would be like doing your push-ups under, doing like 100 something push-ups under a minute, doing
Your
like
sit-ups,
your sit-ups, doing your just like
burpees.
push-ups,
Oh
sit-up,
my God.
burpees, your mile and your timed hike when you get your gate pass to actually go outside of the prison and go into like a real mountain and kind of show what
And
you've been
hike.
training for. Yeah.
Can you describe, Jessica, the fire that you remember most vividly and what it was like to be inside of it and fight it?
The one that honestly, it wasn't a fire, it was a rescue. It was a rescue that I remember most vividly because this was when I was in Camp Rainbow, that is now closed. But it was when I was in Camp Rainbow by Temecula, and we did a rescue in Lake Elsinore, and I believe it was called an extradition or an extradite or something like that. And we did it in the middle of the night, and basically in the night, if anyone is aware about the firefighting, it would be the helicopters cannot fight fire in the night. They can't drop water in the night because they can't see. So what happened was we had to go, it was a car accident that they flew off of like a highway into the mountain, and the person was like launched far into like way far into the mountain. So what you had to do was we had to hike down and then go get the person on a gurney and then bring them up. And she was a very heavy set person, and all of us had to carry her and our gear and all of everything that we had. So we were carrying her, and when you actually lift somebody up from like when you lift them up on the gurney, you cannot go straight up the mountain. So it's even longer to hike up because you have to go in a zigzag form. So that was the one that I remember most because it ended up coming out on the news because it was somebody that tried to suicide with their daughter, and the whole thing was a lie, and she was not injured, and we had to carry her up, and then we still had to fight the fire that her car set. And when we pulled her all the way to the top of the safety location, she just stood up. She stood up and just walked. So that's the one that I remember the most because a lot of the girls were crying on the crew because we couldn't lift her. She was very, very heavy, and we were not getting help from the Free World firemen. So we were getting help as far as guiding us, like, okay, walk this way. So the way that it would work is we would walk 2 steps, put her down, and then rest a bit, and then pick her up again, walk another 2 steps, put her down, rest a little bit, and then continue that way in zigzag form until we got to the top. So
this kind of leads into actually one of the questions in the chat, which is from Jacqueline Brandt, which was, how were you treated by other firefighters who weren't incarcerated? Sonya, how about you, if you want to answer the question about the fire you remember the most, but also how you were treated by other firefighters?
There was one, I can't remember, I think it was in the Topanga Canyon. Um, it was one of the steep mountains that we had. And I'm a sissy when it comes to heights. Like, the higher, the steeper, I'm sitting here telling my foreman, yo, I'm not gonna be able to do this. He's like, I need you to not be a princess. I'm like, I'm not being a princess. I'm being straight up. He's like, okay, we'll go at it and we'll hit it. Let me know. Um, one of the other one of the other firefighters was cutting and his chainsaw just died on him. And what we're taught, you don't ever give up your chainsaw for nothing. Nothing in the world. You don't, that's your chainsaw. You don't let it go. You don't give it up. He asked, he asked my foreman, hey, can she finish this? I have to fix my chainsaw. And my foreman looked at me. He's like, "You think you can handle it?" And I looked. I was like, "Yeah, I have no choice." And it wasn't so much like I have no choice, like I was being forced to do it. It was more or less like, "Yo, it's time to put my big girl boots on, man up, and like let's show them what all of this training that I've been through is for." You know, um, knock that out. Once it was all done, he was like, "Damn good work, ma'am." And I'm like, I'm not even old enough to be a man, but thank you, you know?
No, you're not.
But that made
Here's
me
a
feel really good.
okay. That's great. And here's a question from Martine. Did the work in the wildlands change the firefighter, change your relationship and connection to nature, or was the focus so much on the exhausting labor that there wasn't mental space for thinking about anything else?
Mm. Meaning, like,
Well, one of the things you and I have talked about before, Sonia, is the hiking that you actually like when you were hiking there, it was something that actually felt good and that you kind of wish that you would go back sometimes to doing it. But because,
yeah, there's a few like little hikes I do here and there. Like I'm still good friends with some of the crew members that I have or that I was on crew with, and we still talk. We still go out and go hike. Um, but as far as like the big hikes like we used to do in camp, it's just a sense of accomplishment. It's like you literally start from the bottom of the mountain or wherever you're at, and by the time you like take your break and stop and you look back and you see how far you've hiked in, how far you've cut, like you and your girls like put in work. You're like, hell yeah, we did that. Like, fuck yeah, you know? It was one of those like we rock. We are really some we did that, you know? Um
what do you think,
there was
Jessica? Oh, sorry. Did you have more?
no, go ahead.
As the for the mental space or
Yeah, it like how if whether or not what your relationship to kind of nature or wildlands. I mean, you live in a pretty rural setting now, and you didn't before you were
Mm,
incarcerated.
no,
Do you
I
think that?
definitely learned, sorry not to catch up. I
No, no, go ahead.
definitely learned to appreciate it a lot more because when I was out there on the line fighting fires, when the when it came time to rest, it was easy to look up at. I saw showers, meteor showers. I saw things that I didn't see before, and it did enlighten me a lot, and it connected me more with nature, and I felt more gratitude towards actually being outdoors. And in a way, I felt like I was kind of working on myself mentally because I was pushing myself to limits that I had no clue I could reach.
Do you guys feel like you'd be where you are today had you not participated in the program? Start with you.
Yeah. Oh,
No, like, let's start with you, just.
yeah, I feel like I would still be here where I am, but I just feel like camp did show me that I had to really show up for myself and no one was gonna hold my hand, and that, I was alone and I had to do everything alone, get through everything alone. And I feel like that's a big part of how I matured and was able to kind of know that I didn't want to go back to camp or prison. So
What about you, Sonia?
Basically, I did like a lot of self. Like we had spoke before, I was in a toxic um sense of my point in life where I was incarcerated, so I didn't know who I was personally. And doing the work and being pushed as far as I was mentally, physically, emotionally, all of that made me who I am today. Yeah, I'm still, I feel like without that, yes, I'd be where I am right now, but in a different sense. Like I wouldn't be as strong of a person or strong minded as I am now. I will always be stubborn as an ox, but now like my stubbornness is like, yo, I know what I'm capable of doing. I know what I can do. I know what I can handle. You're not going to sit here and try and manipulate me to do something for you that I know is not going to go right, you know?
Yeah. I do you guys have anything that you would like to say specifically? Because I think we're winding down. Is that right, Carly?
We are winding down, and Jamie, you were doing an excellent job asking audience questions, and so I just thank you for doing
I
that.
wasn't sure if I was
That was
supposed to or not.
I didn't want to interrupt because the three of you were in such great conversation, and so I really appreciate it. We're so grateful that all of you could join us tonight, and also, you know, Jamie, that you wrote this book, and Sonya and Jessica, that you spent the time, and I think too, like, built this trust. The three of you have a great rapport together, and you did what, you know, when we got on earlier today as well, and it really comes through the respect that all of you have for each other, and that this really, I hope, is a way to help honor, really honor Shauna, and continue to get her story out in the world. Maybe as we're leaving, if I think one question is about what could be done, for people who are watching, for people who read the book. Are there things that just everyday folks can do to help change this system, or to advocate, for safer and more just working environments if the fire crews keep going?
I'll answer that and then you guys can. First, I don't know if you guys are reading the chat, but Pamela Wilson wrote, "I am in awe of these women. They are bold and brave and heroes. Thank you so much." And
Thank
I
you,
second
Pamela.
that.
Thank you.
And I also, I want to just take a time out just to thank you guys for coming. And I'm so happy to see your faces. It's been way too long. I really miss our chats.
Right? I
So
miss Jack
thank
in the
you.
Box.
Yeah, it's just been really, thank you for coming tonight. I think in terms of what can be done and what can change is, there has to be a wholesale evaluation of the incarceral system. And I think that starts with jails, state prisons. I think that the way that we treat people and the fact that there's juvenile detention is something that requires a complete remaking. We have to start from scratch with that, because some of the conditions inside are just, they vary from inhumane to abusive to absolutely unacceptable if we're living in a society that values humanity. I think that one of the things that a very small thing that can be done is you can always write to people who are incarcerated. I think writing letters is something, people are lonely, people are isolated. That's part of what the punishment is, and that writing letters is always something that is a view into the outside world. Supporting, like, reading books about abolition, reading books about the history of what prison is and the history of it, and how it's evolved and is being used right now, about it as an industry. I think those are good places to start, and then getting really active in legislation. And in, like, I think it's true that it's really hard to see political works in action, but you got to keep hoping, or I do, otherwise it's like it's
you got to keep hoping. I mean, we've got generations, we've got our kids have kids. I mean, maybe not for our generation right now or Jess's generation, but future generations. Just the support alone, like Jamie said, the letters, they like we
The
had
posters.
one. Man, the kids standing there holding the posters
Yeah.
saying, "Thank you for saving my home.
Oh,
We love
that.
you." Like, it's just like the little small things, you know what I mean? Even if the churches just go visit like those that don't have family members that are able to come and visit, because I did my whole term by myself. That's why I said my crew was my family, you know what I mean? Like, you make it work, you make your whole little camp, your crew, that's your family for your time there.
I feel like also, I know that the camp welcomes donations as far as like fruits, because sometimes we don't get like watermelon or just like small things that way, like little things like that. Mangoes, I know they donated like mangoes and watermelons to the camp, and those days the girls are that they do not stop talking about how we got mangoes, how we got watermelons, or
Yeah.
even putting up a poster by the camp where the girls can see, even a thank you poster,
Yeah.
that the girls, you will make the girls month their whole term,
Yep.
even because even reading one of those posters or seeing, I would see little girls pointing at us saying, "Those are girls, mommy, those are girls," and we're like,
Yep.
"Yeah, we're girls, we can do it, you can do it too." And they're just so proud of us, and I feel like a lot of us don't have people to be proud of us, or if the people that we do have in our life already see us as like faults or failures, and these new people and these innocent kids are just making us just so happy inside, and making us want to go out there and fight and save their homes and save their animals and that type of thing.
Thank you. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for sharing your stories. Especially if you want to read more, here's the book. You can read about Jessica/Carla's story in here, and Sonya, and get to know them more, and also get to know the other women who are featured in the book. We're grateful for you being here, and for everybody out there tonight. We welcome you next week, when we will be joined by Tim Inglesby at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So thanks so much, everybody, and have a nice evening.
Thank you so much.
Carly. Have a good one. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
No problem.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Jamie. Bye, Sonya.
See ya.
Bye,
See ya.
Bye.